Hi guys, it is good to be back with you talking to you again. I hope that if you are in the US and you celebrate Thanksgiving that you had an absolutely amazing one. And even if you don't, I hope that you had a wonderful time off if you got time off. I talked about how I posted a few days ago talking about how tomorrow we're going to start doing some magic using poppets, as they're called now. And the photo I posted, I showed these figure candles, these candles of human figures. And the word poppet actually that is a very modern phrase for what you're doing here. This is not something that's just inherent to like voodoo dolls, in voodoo or poppets in witchcraft. This is actually a technique that goes all the way back to ancient Sumer. One of the things that I would show people whenever we would do the tours at the Met were votive statues. That's what they were traditionally called in ancient Sumer, votive statues. And what they represent is you. Like you, if you were a wealthy person, if you were royalty, or if you were an artist yourself, you would either make or hire a artisan to create a statue of you. And what they would do with it is leave it in the temple at the altar of the gods all the time. And the reason they did that is because since you couldn't be there yourself all the time, you had, family, you had a empire to run, you had a job to do, whatever it is, you can't be in the temple in front of the gods all the time. So you put a statue that depicts yourself in front of the gods so that even while you're out doing whatever you need to do, you are still there in the presence of divinity at all times. And like the way they would show, this is also where the thing about prayer comes from, how the thing about your hands being clasped, how we now in modern times equate that with prayer. Well, that's not just modern times. Like all the way back in ancient Sumer, the votive statues were all have their hands clasped in front of them. And what that's, and another thing, not only were their hands clasped, but they would also have really big eyes and they would be looking slightly upwards. So that whenever they're placed on the altar, their hands are clasped and they're looking up at the god whose temple it was. The eyes were usually made out of, what's that stone called? Lapis. And the reason for that, so that's why they would say that, they couldn't understand why all of these ancient Sumerian statues had blue eyes. So they would think, did that mean that they had blue eyes, or did that mean that they saw an alien that had blue eyes? There's all kinds of crazy stuff out there. What it actually is lapis, they divided the heavens into layers. And the very highest layer of heaven, before you broke through into, pure divinity, each layer of heaven was symbolized by a stone. That highest level, that highest layer was symbolized by lapis. So the reason those statues had lapis in the eyes is because that symbolized that they're seeing the highest heavens. And remember, whatever you see, whatever you focus your attention on, is the direction you're going to move in. So they were basically doing a kind of magic ritual so that they were propelling themselves to heaven. But the clasped hands, what that represented was basically, if you're standing there listening to somebody talk and you do like this, it means you have my complete and undivided attention. I'm not paying attention to anything else going on. I'm looking at you. I'm taking you in, registering everything that you're saying, that you're conveying to me. That is the exact same thing that it was meant to be to the gods. Like, I'm listening to you, instruct me. I'm paying attention to you, guide me. I'm taking in everything that you're sending my way, processing it, so bless me. Protect me, guide me, bless me. That's essentially what they're doing. They're saying, you are the sole point upon which I am focused. That came down through time, and even to this day, if you ever take like a Reiki class, like in Reiki 1, they usually teach you just things like, laying on hands and pushing energy through your hands into a person, into a thing, whatever. One of the things that they usually teach you in some of the more advanced levels, like Reiki 2, will be how to do energy work on someone else when you're nowhere near them, but you still kind of need the training wheels, because that's really what these things are. Anytime you're using an item in magic, you're using a kind of training wheel. Where was I going with that? Oh, so in Reiki, what they will do is, for example, say you have a friend who's on the other side of the world who's sick, and you're trying to send them healing energy. They teach you that you can use a doll to do it. And it could be anything. It could be a teddy bear, it could be a Barbie doll, it could be a clay figure that you make yourself. The only thing that matters is that to you, it represents that person. And by putting energy into that figure, you're putting energy into that person. You know, there used to be a lot of this stuff has, people talk about how, for example, important intent is in magic. Like, intent is the end all and the be all. And to be honest, it is vastly important. Like, what you intend for the energy to do, a lot of times is what it's going to do. But there are also all kinds of little bizarre, odd rules, laws, whatever you want to call them, about the way energy and magic behaves that you can take advantage of to radically increase your ability to do magic. And one example for, when you're using one of these candles, like say this represents you, one of the things people will do is try to tie this to yourself somehow, so that any magic you do on this, you're doing on yourself. So, people like the person that gave me these, she says what she usually did was just carved her astrological sign on it. So me, for example, I'm I'm actually, like, by Sumerian and Babylonian astrology, I am the sign Ophiuchus, which they eliminated gradually. In modern astrology, I would be a Sagittarius, so I would do like just a little arrow representing Sagittarius. But you can also tie it to yourself in a lot of other ways. And this is what I mean, going back to the little rules and laws of magic. Let's say, for example, you were trying to do energy work on someone. You're trying to send energy at a person, but they are shielded. They do magic every day, and they're shielding themselves, and nothing can get through. Well, one of the things that you can do to bypass this, and this is what I mean about the rules and all of that sort of thing, is anything that belongs to the person creates a link to the person, but especially anything body. For example, a hair, fingernails, anything like that. So you could do something like, say, for example, if you're trying to send energy to a person and you have a piece of their hair, you could, say, tie the hair around the neck of this figure so it creates a stronger bond. So how does that affect the shielding? Because if you have something that belongs to that person, you're not trying to send energy through their shield. You're not trying to send energy through a barrier. You have you're kind of affecting them from the inside out. You're inside the shield doing the work there because you have something that ties you to them physically. And it could be anything like old-timey people would, prick their finger for a tiny drop of blood, or, whatever it is. There's a million different ways. But like I said, all of this sort of stuff, what you're learning is formulas. And these formulas can be applied in a bunch of, so many different ways that it's almost impossible to go into them all. But it also reminded me, that brings to mind, talking about the formulas, was something that a lot of you guys asked me, and I kept forgetting to respond. You were saying, if you charge a tattoo for a specific purpose, like, say, for example, protection in this case. Say you get a tattoo that is a talisman designed for protection. Well, we've talked about how every time you do something, every time you banish, you are banishing all the energy from out of that area. So like if you create a talisman and put it on your altar and then do the lesser banishing around it, you have basically nuked that talisman. You've destroyed all the etheric patterns in it. Here's the thing about the formula. We were talking last time about how when you consecrate a talisman, you're taking the talisman through the same process that you yourself are taken through when you're being initiated. You know, you're presented to each of the 4 elements and their blessing is called down on you. That's the same thing you're doing to the talisman. It's the same thing. Remember not too long ago we were talking about how the way you protect your things, like your wand, like the one thing traditionally that you do to protect your wand from outside energies is to wrap it in black cloth, black material, because black is absorbent. It prevents other energies from leaking through and affecting it. And this is one of those things, like, you don't just have to take someone's word for it. I mean, you can notice the difference in the way you feel when you dress in, like, one day get up and dress completely in black head to toe. The next day get up and dress completely in pink or white or orange or red or any of those colors. Notice the difference in the way you feel. You will feel a difference when you're wrapped in black. Well, that's why we wrap wands, or that's why we wrap crystals, or that's why we wrap talismans. We wrap these things in black cloth. So if you charge a tattoo and you don't want it to be, you know, nuked every time you're doing the lesser banishing, that's one of the reasons for wearing a black robe, is because you are wrapping, it's again that formula. You are doing the same thing to yourself, just like whenever you consecrate a talisman, you're doing the same thing to the talisman that was done to you. Well, in this case, you're doing the same thing to yourself that you would do to tools like wands. You're protecting your body. You're covering things that you've charged in a black robe. A lot of times, especially, you know, like people who even have tattoos on their face or anything, a lot of times in a lot of lodges and orders, you may not even, you won't know the people there because they'll be wearing masks. Not only will they have on robes, but they will also have on a mask to cover their face. So it's like, the entirety of your body can be covered, so that you could be head to toe tattooed and still have them protected and not blast the energy out of them. Let me think. What else was I wanting to tell you guys about? Seems like there was something. Those the statues at the Met, the votive statues, the Sumerian votive statues. They found these things under the floors of temples, where not only would they be, sat on the altar, but they would be buried under the floors of the temples, so that they would be there forever. And they were there forever until we found them and moved them to this museum, which is their new home now. But there were all kinds of different things. I don't mean to ramble here, but there were all kinds of different things, different formulas that we can learn by studying the temples. For example, all temples in ancient Sumer, in ancient Egypt, in ancient Greece, in ancient Rome, all temples were either male or female. And the way you know if it's a male temple or a female temple, a male temple, since male energy is symbolized by the sun, the closest thing to the energy of the sun in the earth is a volcano. So any rock that came from volcanic areas was considered masculine or male, and that would be used to construct male temples. For example, some of the Egyptian temples that are still standing to this day in ancient Egypt were very masculine, very male temples. On the other hand, feminine female temples tended to be stones that had been mined near water, that had something to do with like granite, for example. Like the temples of Diana in the old world, those were made of granite. The thing about the masculine and feminine temples, though, they amplify energy. There's quartz in the stone of these temples, the same quartz that they used to use, the same kind of quartz that they used to use in the very earliest radios. So you can program them with an intent. Like you can use a temple as basically a giant wand, almost like a conscious, sentient wand that you kind of team up with in a way. You know, you connect to it, use it. But what I was getting to is the masculine and feminine temples, they work almost like magnets. Think of a magnet. If you've got two magnets and you turn them with male and female facing each other, they attract. If you turn them with female and female facing each other, they attract. If you turn them with male and male sides facing each other, they push away. You can't make it stick together. It's almost like there's a force. You can feel a little pressure, like trying to push away. Same thing in temples. Like even if it was a masculine temple, you didn't want all male energy. You didn't want all masculine energy. So even in the masculine temples, even though they may be made almost entirely out of masculine stone, you will still find somewhere, something in there will be made out of a more feminine stone. A lot of times it would be the altar. And the reason the reason it's even called an altar is because you are altering whatever you put on it. You are using it to alter something, to change something from being just a purely material object to being both a material and spiritual object. And I have rambled on for way too long. I will be here tomorrow. We will start doing some magic with our poppets, with our votive figures, whatever you want to call them. That's what we're going to get started on, using those with oils and all kinds of other things. I hope you guys are doing very well. I've missed talking to you, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.